the most hurt I ever was as in my whole boxing career, amateur or pros, was actually in the amateurs. I got stopped one time in the amateurs, and it was it's the only time that I ever actually felt like a separation from consciousness, like completely for a couple of seconds. In the end, I actually wound up beating the count, but the referee stopped the fight while I was on the ground. But in those moments, where it's the only time I can really describe it as like what you see in like a Rocky movie, where Rocky's imagining like he's going down slowly. That was the only time I've been hurt you guys have seen it. I've been hurt in the pros. I've been down in the pros. I've been even really rocked badly in the pros. But it was never to the point of like losing a sense of where I was for a second, I know some guys get a sense of losing a sense of where they were for a while, but basically this fight, in the amateurs, I had a guy named Darling Jimenez who was my rival. And he was a big phenom in the New York area. He was probably the guy that everybody in the New York metro area was looking at to be the next star to excel in professional boxing when he turned pro. Every generation, especially in New York, we have our guys that we kind of look at as like, okay, this guy's got a lot of potential to go places, to become a star as a professional boxer. And some guys fall off and some guys don't. But obviously, every generation, every quadrennial, because every quadrennial is, an Olympic year. You get guys that turn pro, and then you get a new set of guys coming up from the JOs, coming up from the juniors, and they're looking at these guys as the stars. And I remember my generation had some pretty good fighters. I had myself, I had Luis Collazo, even Yuri Foreman came and moved from Belarus to New York, and he was competing a lot in the New York amateur area, and also did very well, and he also ended up becoming a world champion later on. But the phenom of my generation was Darling Jimenez. Was also Shamir Reyes, actually. He was in the JOs, but he turned pro when he won the national JO title. So Shamir Reyes actually never fought as a senior in the men's division. And now in the men's division, when I was an amateur, it was 16 and a half and older. And Shamir Reyes was a guy who, a southpaw kid. He was trained in my gym. I actually used to spar him when I first started. He used to actually beat my ass. He was a southpaw. I was just learning to spar. I was learning the boxing in general. And Shamir had just won a national JO title. But Don King was heavily after Shamir. And Shamir, instead of staying in the amateurs and fighting men in the amateurs, which looking back now, at the time I had no clue how important that was. But for me now, looking back now, I feel like it's important that you start to fight your first grown men as an amateur and not as a pro. Like, I don't feel like a kid who has a lot of success in the JOs should go directly pro from the JO success. And Shamir did that. I haven't seen too many guys have a successful pro career from having done that. But Shamir was a good fighter, and the thing is, he signed with Don King, and Don King, by that point, still had a big reputation, but by that point also had lost a lot of dates and was getting less and less TV dates and less and less influence over the sport of professional boxing. Make a long story short, Shamir turned pro. Otherwise, he would have been competing in the Golden Gloves when I got there, because I didn't have an amateur career in the JOs. I started boxing late. I started boxing at 16, but by the time I had my first amateur fight, I was 17 years old. So I got thrust into this circle of people, and I had a lot of catching up to do. I won a novice New York Golden Gloves right away, but then I'm in the open division where now I've got to fight these guys. And, the guys in my weight class were both Shamir Reyes and Darling Jimenez, who were both looked at as, future phenoms. I guess I was sort of fortunate that Shamir ended up turning pro, and I didn't have to deal with him in the New York Golden Gloves. But Jimenez still remained, and so I had to deal with him, and he was in my weight class, as was Shamir, but Shamir turned pro. So, make a long story short on Shamir's situation, he signed with Don King, and Don ended up kind of using him up. I know Shamir got beat by a guy named William Abelian, I remember, and then Antonio Cermeño, who actually was an ex-world champion by that point, or he became a world champion after, I don't know. Cermeño actually wound up getting killed in Venezuela. He got kidnapped by some rebels or whatnot, and they want the ransom money. That's rest in peace, Antonio Cermeño, who was a good fighter, but he stopped Shamir as well. And so that kind of, King didn't really get Shamir to where I felt like Shamir had the potential to go to. But Darling remained in the amateurs. And so I started competing, and all of a sudden everybody's talking about, this kid Jimenez, and I've got to kind of get through him, because now I've won the novice division, and now I got to go to the open, and he's the guy in the open division in my weight class. And literally, it started becoming a regular thing where I was really becoming a prodigy where I was excelling really fast. I was getting better and better every tournament I was doing. But the problem was in New York, I was running into Darling in all the finals. And Darling had a lot of experience. Darling probably, I don't know for sure, but I think the first time I fought Darling, he probably had over 60, 70 amateur fights. And I went into the fight with about 8 amateur fights. And this is the fight where I got stopped. Also, you'll notice in this fight, I was front foot heavy. I had actually pulled my calf muscle a few weeks before playing football at the park, and so I fought in this tournament. I fought the semifinals of this tournament with kind of a strained calf muscle, and then I fought the finals of this tournament with a strained calf muscle. I won in the semifinals, and then in the finals, you notice when I'm fighting Jimenez in this video. If you watch the video, it's on YouTube, where I'm kind of front foot heavy, and I never fight on the front foot even back then. But I had to kind of fight on the front foot because I couldn't put the weight on my back foot. And I think that also kind of limited my movement because I was very awkward. At that time, I was still learning a lot, but I had a lot of athleticism, so I could confuse you. Darling was more set in his style. He was, he was the guy that everybody was looking to become the phenom in professional boxing. He was the guy that, in the New York generation really looked at New York Metro, the heads of the New York Metro boxing area really looked at Darling as a favorite. And it was frustrating for me because I wanted to be so badly to look at that way. But of course, I felt like every time I was getting in the ring with him, I felt like there were people that were already just considering me lost even before I got in there. I have actually press clippings from New York Golden Glove finals that I fought him in, even going into the finals and going into the tournament finals, where people are talking about him like he's a phenom before we even fight the fights, So I remember being really, really frustrated, but it was also very, very motivating. But anyway, this fight here where I get stopped, and this is one of the hardest punches I ever took, maybe the hardest single punch I ever took, because it's the only punch that ever separated from me from my consciousness, even for the few seconds that it did. And it's the finals of the New York Metros tournament in late 1998. It's my 8th or 9th amateur fight. And the fight is a 5 2-minute rounds. At that time, we used to fight 5 2-minute rounds in the open division, which now they've gone back to the 3-3s. They used to change it all the time in the amateurs. They couldn't get their stuff together. But this is I think the last round. We were only like 20 seconds from the end, and what he does is he feints me. He feints me with a right hand, and I kind of pull back. You shouldn't pull back square on the ropes. You shouldn't pull back with your chin up on the ropes. Again, I'm making a lot of mistakes. I was very athletic here, but I was not experienced enough to not make all the mistakes yet. So he gets me. I'm pulling back, and he fakes me with the right hand, and then he throws a quick left hook right hand, and I'm looking hook so much because his reputation was always for a big hook, and the hook right hand was basically a setup, a decoy hook, and he hits me with a big right hand, and I go down, and you can check it out here. As you see, I'm hurt. I'm rolling over. And the referee stops it right away here. But as you can see, I end up beating the count. Here's my frustration with the referee. I'm trying to get him off me. My frustration with the referee there was that I will tell you, man, for that second, I went down like I felt like I was in a cloud. Like I went down like I didn't know for a second what I was. It's the only time it felt like in the Rocky movie when Rocky's going down really slow. The only time in my whole boxing career that I got hit with a punch and I felt like that. So as you can see, I went down like I'm out cold before I hit the ground. I went down stiff. And when I hit the ground, I guess it woke me up because I'm telling myself, oh man, I'm down. I got to get up. And so what do you do when you're down and laying down? You roll over to get up, right? You're on your back, you roll over, you get on all fours and you get up, right? So I went to roll over too quickly to try to get up, and I was still in a haze. And so when I went to roll over, I was like, oh my God, like what is this? What am I feeling, And I just put my head back down into my gloves, but now I'm on my stomach. And when the referee saw that, he stopped the fight instantly. I guess it's the amateurs, they take precautions. I was pissed because at that point, I looked down into my gloves, I looked up, and then I was finally good. When I put my head in my gloves, like to try to clear my head, and it all happens in a few seconds, as you guys can see. But when I do look up again, when my head comes out of my gloves, I'm good, and I just get up. I have no idea that he has stopped the fight when I rolled over. If you watch the whole thing, I'm kind of pissed about the stoppage. I'm angry and so on and so forth. It was an experience. At that time, I was kind of embarrassed that I had gotten stopped that way. I knew that it was the fight that everybody wanted to see because they wanted to see if the prodigy level success that I had in just a few amateur fights thus far could transcend against a guy who would really, really, was really, really established at that point, and the New York metro area, the heads of the New York metro area boxing, USA Boxing panels, they looked at this guy like he was a future world champion. They looked at him like he was the guy to look at. And to be honest, me and Jimenez wound up fighting a bunch of finals in the amateurs. He beat me 5 out of 6 times, but in reality, I was getting better every single time out. I had gotten a late start, and I felt like I won the last 3, but I only got 1 decision. We fought 3 times at 125 pounds. That was the first time. And then when I moved up, coincidentally, he moved up. So we wound up fighting. We wound up catching each other in all the finals of the 132-pound division as well in New York. So we would just constantly be in the finals against one another in every single New York tournament. The frustrating thing was that I couldn't get a decision against him. First, I couldn't beat him at all. He was really beating me. And then as we move up to, I didn't feel like I lost any of the fights I fought him at 132 pounds. I felt like, the 125 pounds, I was still gaining experience, but he beat me. I felt like at 132, I felt like I won all 3 fights. But nonetheless, they were solid experiences. I tell people today, without Donald Jimenez, there is no Paulie'S, because he gave me a reason to go back to the gym and try to excel and try to get better and better and better, knowing that I was going to see him in every tournament. Because in the amateurs, it's just about tournaments. It's just about, you got to try to win as many tournaments as you can so you build up your resume and people want to sign you. And it was frustrating because in order to get to the nationals, I had to win a New York tournament to represent New York at the Nationals, and I couldn't get by him. So he was going to all the Nationals, and I felt like really frustrated that I couldn't get that national experience. I remember I went to the 99 National PAL tournament where you can get sponsored to go, and I remember I got sponsored to go. And I went there, and I was like, okay, finally going to get to go to the Nationals. And I think Darling was there too, and we didn't run into each other. But who do I draw my first fight? I finally get to go to the Nationals. Who do I draw my first fight at the Nationals? Rock Allen. Rock Allen is Nazim Richardson's son. Nazim Richardson, as you guys know, was worked with Hopkins. He's the guy that found the plaster of Paris and Margarito's hand wraps. He's a solid trainer, and he had twin sons, Rock and Tiger Allen. They were terrific. As a matter of fact, Tiger Allen had lost the national JO finals to Shamir Reyes a few years earlier. So the Allen twins were unbelievable, and they were Nazim Richardson's sons. And I draw this guy that my first fight at the National PAL tournament in '99, and I was so aggravated. And I'm like, I'm fine, because I was looking forward to being at the Nationals and saying, now these guys are going to wait till these guys get a load of me. I couldn't get by Darling, but now I'm going to show these guys at the Nationals what I can do. I draw Rock Allen. I lose a 3-2 split decision in a fight that in a fight that I felt like I won. I recently, I think I found this fight. I might be posting it to the Paulie TV page as well. It's my 99 PL tournament final with Rock Allen. Rock ended up, I think, winning the tournament or going to losing in the finals, but it qualified him for the Olympic trials, which were going on early the next year.